In this video I'm going to talk about the use of tables. Now tables differ from ranges because ranges, if you have just a block of data somewhere that we would call a range and you format it and you add some new data, well, oftentimes you have to reformat that area. And so that's somewhat of a drudgery. Also, if you have charts that are based on a range, there's a possibility that your chart's not going to change when you add new data to a range, but that's not the case when you make charts based on tables. So let's go ahead and get started. In the upper left here I have a block of data, and in order to turn it into a table I hit Control T, and I accept the defaults, and it's now formatted nicely. Now in order to get rid of this table formatting, if I don't like it, then I can just click anywhere in the table, right click, go down to the option that says table and say convert to range, and so that'll convert it back to a range. And then depending on the version of Excel you're using, you might have different options for formatting. And let's see if I can find mine real quick. I don't, at any rate, you want to clear the formatting. I don't know why my formatting's disappeared here, but I know in the past sometimes there's just an option to clear out the formatting. Anyway, I'm going to turn it back into a table again. So it's nicely formatted, but you need to clear out the formatting. Alright, now I'm back to a table again, and this gives me the ability to do things like sort it, or rather filter it by name, so I can just, for example here, get one person in the list, and then I can get rid of that filter. I can similarly filter by units, and just select a couple different things. Another thing you can do is, instead of just filtering by just a straight value, you can go under this option for numeric columns that says numbers filter and do things like less than or greater than. So I could say greater than, and I will select 800 is my option. Again, this is a pretty handy feature for dealing with data. When we have a table selected, we can go over to this Design tab and name it. So there's a name in the upper left hand corner that gets created by Excel by default, and we can change this to something that's a little more meaningful. Maybe I'll call it sales. And now I can do calculations based on the name of this table. So whereas typically we might take a little block of data right here and call it something like units and then say sum of units if we wanted to get the sum of that. Instead, we can now reference the name of the table and then the column within it. So for example, if I want the sum, I go equals sum, and the name of this table I know is sales, so I start typing SALES, and there it is, and I get this icon of a table, and then I will select units within there. And so the syntax is a little different than what you would work with a range, but I think it's understandable. So, and I hit return and I get that value. Similarly, if I wanted the average of the revenue column in the sales table, I type equals average and then sales and then revenue. Alright, now if I were to do the same thing in this table, perhaps I could oh, actually, before I do that, let me just demonstrate something. I will add in another row. I'll name the person John, and watch what's going to happen to these numbers over here. I'll add in another 5,000 units, and you can see the units change automatically. And so that's the nice thing about tables, is they automatically expand as you add data either to the bottom, or on the right hand side you can add columns and it'll just be added to the table. Now if I were to take this and call this units, and then if I were to come out here and say equals sum of units, I have a value there, but if I were to add in an additional row like John and go 10, 10, nothing happens. So there's the difference between tables and ranges. Okay, let me demonstrate some other features. I will hit Control T here. I'm automatically on the Design tab. It named it Table 3. One of the things I can do is I can click on this option here in the ribbon that says Total Row, and I get some additional information there. Also, another thing I can do is I can click out here, and if I want to calculate something like rev per unit, so if I want to do some calculated field, I can do something like this, equals, I can click on revenue divided by units. Now notice the formula is a little interesting. It puts things in brackets and uses @ signs. So be it, it works. But I hit return and it calculates it for the whole column, which is fantastic. Let me get rid of the total row for a minute, and I will add on some more data. This time I will duplicate the Dagon row. 1, 2, 3, 50,000 and 50. Oh well. Anyway. And something I can do from the Design tab is I can say remove duplicates. So it may be the case that you will have duplicate rows of data, and this is a quick way to clean up your data that you're working with. And it notes how many there were. Sorry. Alright, and then rather simply I can turn this into a table, and I have lots of formatting options up here on the Design ribbon. I can make it green and blue and lots of other things depending on my interest. Alright, this time I'm going to create a chart. The first thing I need to do though is I need to fix my date column, and I'll say format because that does not look like a date, and I'll change it to a date, and that's solid now. Alright, so now I'll highlight this information, hit Control T, it's now a table, and I will go over to Insert, and I will select on a line chart, and there's my line chart. And because this chart is based on a table, watch what happens when I add some data. I'll go 1/1/2005, and let's just say that energy prices crashed. You can see a line drop straight down. So again, nice thing about basing formulas or charts based on tables is that they will change as you add data to them. Alright, this time you work with a bigger table. I'll turn that into a table by hitting Control T after selecting it. I will go up into the upper left and I will give it a name. And I will demonstrate filtering. So if I had multi-layers of filtering, such as picking I want Ashley, and the product is lipstick, and the region is in the east, I can get a block of data. And I can take something like this, go Control C, create a new tab, paste it there. And so if I wanted to do this for multiple, I guess, snapshots of data, I could do this and create a report out of it. Because obviously you can't, for example, compare Ashley and Steven and somebody else side by side that easily. Or maybe compare East versus West. But if you pull out little snapshots of it, then you could easily compare it and analyze it separately. And you could share it with somebody else without giving them all of the data. Alright. I am going to clear all the, up here in the upper left I've got a quick way of clearing all of the filters. Otherwise I could have just gone down and clicked clear one at a time from the columns. Lastly, I'd like to demonstrate something called slicers. And the way that slicers work is either from the Insert tab, there is a little ribbon spot called Slicer, or from the Design tab, there's also an Insert Slicer option, so it's the same thing. So if I click on this, I can select the slicers that I want on the page, like name, product, and location. And you can arrange these any way you want. And I can do the same filtering that I just did a minute ago, Ashley, East, lipstick. The nice thing about slicers is that uh, it tells you visually what you've selected and filtered on, whereas when you're just looking at these if it changes from a triangle to this funnel, then you know it's filtered, but there could be one thing filtered in there, there could be 10 things filtered in there. It's hard to know, but if you put on a slicer, it makes it more easy to see what the filters are. And if you're doing a presentation or talking with other people, this is a really easy way to make sure the communication stays good.